Hey everybody, and welcome to a brand new podcast titled John Scott Ask. I'm your host John Scott, and this is a podcast that is going to be delivering kind of like a sharing kind of podcast, I think, amongst everybody in the world of care, kind of the care sector. I kind of just want it to be a podcast that's going to be able to lend itself information, and you may be listening, you possibly have a loved one or a family relation or even a friend who's in being cared for. You may be a carer yourself, or a health professional, social worker, or you just may have come across this podcast. Whoever you are, this is just really about having just sort of open conversations with various people that will definitely pass on a decent amount of knowledge that they can give over these next few episodes of this podcast. Obviously, I kind of just want it to kind of just be something that people can use, like a platform. And if ever you want to kind of just get in touch with me, or if you're interested on coming on my one of my episodes to talk about something relative and current to what we do on the show, which is mainly just talking around the whole care industry, feel free to get in contact. And if anyone just wants to contact in general, you want some feedback, or you want to know a few things, like you might be somebody who's at home and you if you're a guardian or a father or a mother, you might have somebody who you're looking for your son or daughter to kind of enter the kind of care sector or residential care or community, in the community kind of support setup. You may have some questions, and I'll try and find guests that I can get on in the meantime that I can kind of put those questions to on your behalf, because sometimes I know how difficult it is, just from my own experience, of just having somebody you can just talk to, like a social worker. It's not always that easy to get the same social worker these days. You may just be phoning up and getting different people all the time. You just may feel a little bit lost. Who knows? I just want this to be something that's literally out there just for you, for your kind of use, and a kind of platform for people to use. So if you do want to get in touch with us at the show, you can email me at John Scott, that's with 2 T's, John Scott, ask, right at the end, just John Scott ask at gmail.com. That's John Scott ask at gmail.com. Feel free to send me an email, anything you want, with regards to episodes, and like I say, if you have questions, feel free to put them in. So coming up on this one, on this first episode, I'm really really excited to bring you somebody that I've kind of I feel like I've been learning for a long time now out of various books and just the website of certain things. But we're going to be talking all things person-centered planning today, and also just kind of the means, the history, and we've got one of the most sort of current people in, and definitely from the horse's mouth, coming on this episode. So without further ado, I'm going to bring you that now, and I'm going to bring in my guest. So yeah, here she is, Helen Sanderson. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. And Helen, if you wouldn't mind just giving, so our listeners know, just a little bit about who you are and your sort of background.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here.
You're welcome.
I guess the short answer is, originally I was an occupational therapist, right, and I've had various roles in health and social care over the past 30 or so years. Mainly, a lot of the work has been through an organisation called Helen Sanderson Associates, which is a sort of consultancy and development team that we set up about 18 years ago. And through that, I've ended up working for the government as one of their advisors around person-centred practices and writing guidance for different the Department of Health and Department of Education. But most recently, I've set up wellbeing teams and community circles, as I want to really demonstrate in practice what some of the ideas that we've used in our consultancy and training, what they really can do when they're put into practice.
Sure. Wow. It's kind of weird because like I've kind of like always read from your books, and your name's always been there within my kind of like where I've been working, like Helen Sanderson Associates. That's the place to go. When PCP was first sort of brought into my company, I guess it was kind of like I've kind of sort of read all from you all this time, and now obviously it's great to be speaking to you like this. Obviously now with PCP and person-centered planning, how did you sort of first come about with this sort of concept, and like the sort of industries that you know, was it always care that you looked at first and foremost to use that?
Well, I came across it because I was doing a master's in quality assurance and health and social care, and I wanted to focus on planning. And I'd been aware of some of the work around person-centered planning that had been happening in the States, led by John O'Brien and Michael Small and different colleagues there. But at that stage, and this was even before email, which tells you how old I am.
Right.
And you could only get hold of it if you somehow managed to get hold of a handout that would have been photocopied like 20 or 30 times, and the numbers were never in the right order.
Okay.
And that was the way that the information about person-centered planning started to get shared.
Mm-hmm.
So I persuaded the Roundtree Foundation to fund me and People First in Manchester to look at the different processes around person-centered planning and see how we could apply them to an English context, because again, things that have been developed in the US don't automatically mean they can work in the same way here. And I must admit, I had this great idea that if we looked at paths and maps and essential lifestyle planning and personal futures planning, that we could put together a fantastic British hybrid of them all. And I was so wrong, because each of the different styles of planning have a very particular contribution. So I learnt that. But because I was doing that work, and it was about the same time that Valuing People was being put together, I was then invited with my colleague Martin Routledge to write the guidance for Valuing People around person-centered planning. And I think that then gave us a great platform really to share what was available. And at that stage we'd written the book called People, Plans and Possibilities, which was pulling together the research that we'd done with People First around the different styles. So actually, honestly, it was just around supporting people with learning disabilities until my daughter needed some support, and that's where one-page profiles really got started.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Like I knew John O'Brien had done it, but I didn't realise like how kind of sort of secluded it was. Just that we, just got these little handouts, and it was kind of like a something you might have missed.
Email as well.
Yeah, wow. I mean, now when I first sort of found out about person-centered planning was probably, I'm trying to think back now, within my company, which is basically I work in a company that owns sort of like 5 residential care homes, and it's for young people with learning disabilities and autism. And the first time, I think it was, I can't remember what book it was of yours, but it was like the Red Book, and one of my senior managers gave it to me, and they said like, we've come to you because we think you would be quite you've got the personality to do this. And at the time I was quite young, but I was very not outspoken, but I kind of had like, I was always trying to forward think a lot, and always like trying to advocate for people with a learning disability, trying to look from their kind of point of view, I guess, as opposed to, and at the time it was like, not that there was, I mean, people with change always find it difficult sometimes, but like, I guess at one time there was the kind of care where you would perhaps be going out in groups or doing things like a picnic or something, but there would be like five people we kind of support coming out with us, and or whether it's like bowling, it would be like, instead of just like looking at the one person, it would be kind of like a group thing. And to that old kind of mindset, you're still, in their mind, this is still a caring thing to do. It's like it's in their kind of mindset. I guess it's like, yeah, this is the way to do it. You know, they get out, they kind of like they're trying to live. But for me, it was kind of like, how do you bring something as simple as like being as ordinary as possible into this kind of work structure? And when I kind of read PCP, like stuff around person-centered planning, I was like, this is totally the tool that I needed to kind of like implement things a little bit further. And the one thing I liked about it the most is that it was, instead of like, you know, if you've ever gone into like, if you read somebody's folder sometimes, like their care folder, a lot of the stuff in that has always been about like problem solving or issues from the past. It's never really about the true person, like what really does interest them, what is really important to them as opposed to for them, which is like quite a defined thing with person-centered planning. I found, like, when people start to think about that kind of way. And so I've always, when I first got it, obviously there were challenges early on, but I think from then on we've not looked back. Like our entire company kind of across the board now kind of adopts that approach, and things have just, I would say things have really moved fast, like really, really fast, and moved away from that sort of old style to now where we're looking at a person, you know, from that person's perspective, and whether it's decision making or you know, especially if you have to advocate for people, you've got that great circle of support where it's not just one person just deciding. It's kind of like a group type thing, whether it's, you know, a professional's input, their own PA, their family, etc., etc. As from your point of view, Helen, like when you've gone round to say certain like places, were you ever sort of faced with challenges of people like being a little bit resistant to changing and adopting that approach to begin with?
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And I think what person-centered planning can do is incredibly powerful and also very challenging and disruptive, because it invites us to rethink power and power relationship and choice and control, you know, at its heart, really. And if your approach to the work is very much around enjoying being the professional, enjoying being in charge, then this cannot sit comfortably with you, because this invites us to have different conversations about what matters to people and what does good support look like from their perspective, and what could the future look like. And it invites us to challenge labels and stereotypes and negative perceptions. So you can imagine that there are some people and places where they're supporting people who just absolutely embrace this because this is what they think and feel anyway, and all therefore we're offering is a different structural process to hold these conversations. And yet there are other places for whom this is just not what they want to engage with, because their concept of power and control and power over is not something that they're willing to change.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you know, it's kind of one of those things, because like even today, I still see that imagery of what I was explaining earlier about, you might, you know, just the other day, for instance, I was like at a bowling alley, and this like little kind of sort of car or like minibus type thing turns up, and there's like 8 people getting out with like 2 maybe support workers, and I'm like, so they all wanted to come here at this precise time with each other. And, you know, I suppose there's 2 ways of looking at it, because I can't always solely blame on like the company or the support workers, because it can often be a time of like financial restraints and stuff like that. I kind of get that, but it's kind of, I mean, it's odd to think in a time we live in now with all this kind of information, with like people's rights and everything that's out there with mental capacity and stuff like that, that kind of care still takes place, I guess. To a degree, because I guess like everybody has the right to kind of live their life the way they want to live their life, you know, up until a point, like and like you say, like I know some people are really for it, and some people I can imagine are like, no, this takes everything away from us. and it can be very, very difficult, I guess, to explain it in a way if you're comfortable with just the old sort of style. One of the things I wanted to ask you, like, there's a big thing in person-centered planning about kind of hopes and dreams, and like the right for anybody